Bernard Madoff has put himself back on the front page. The record-setting Ponzi schemer, serving a 150-year sentence for fraud, gave a 2-hour jailhouse interview to a New York Times reporter. Madoff said the banks and big hedge funds he worked with had to know what he was up to. The evidence was there in the discrepancies between what he told federal regulators and what he told the banks. It's nothing new, says attorney Brad Friedman, who represents more than 100 Madoff victims.
We have been alleging for 2 years now in a variety of derivative litigations pending predominantly in New York State that the banks knew or should have known, and that other hedge funds, actually even more to the point, knew or should have known and had access to information.
The Times isn't the only entity talking to Madoff. Irving Picard, the bankruptcy trustee charged with getting victims' money back, has interviewed him as well. And Bradley Simon, a former federal prosecutor now in private practice, says the federal government ought to visit Madoff, too.
The government, if the Justice Department, if they weren't so concerned about public relations and so afraid to be perceived as giving him a deal, they ought to be using him, too, to make cases.
So far, cases have been made against only a handful of former Madoff associates. In the Times interview, Madoff doesn't identify any of the banks he considers complicit. The trustee has a $6.4 billion lawsuit against J.P. Morgan Chase. The bank says it was under no legal obligation to sniff out the Madoff fraud. Madoff did give the Times one bit of personal information. When his 46-year-old son, Mark, killed himself in December, he says it was prison authorities who told him he would not be allowed to attend the funeral. Warren Levinson, The Associated Press, New York.